Whether Conservatives like it or not, the game now is 50-50. The same opinion polls that said that the Liberal Party was going to lap the Labor Party at the next election now say that Kevin Rudd has made the game an even game. Now, whether you think that's the right thing or the wrong thing, or whether you like Kevin or whether you don't, and you know that I don't like Kevin Rudd, you know that I don't think people should vote for Kevin Rudd, something has changed, which means people can't just sit back and expect the Labor Party to implode and therefore we will get a change of government. Instead, the Canberra Press Gallery are now very much compliant and running the Rudd line. Hence why we get a story from a couple of years ago about Tony Abbott, and Tony Abbott being forced to pay back more than $9,400 in travel expenses. Now, the lefties have got very excited about this today, suggesting that he was trying to defraud the Commonwealth of $9,500. Well, of course, he paid it back. Now, was it right that he made the claim in the first place? No way. Should he have had to pay it back? Absolutely. Should he have confessed to having to pay it back, not having to be dragged kicking and screaming via a Freedom of Information request? Absolutely. But is he the only MP in the history of the Parliament of recent years who has not either deliberately or accidentally got it wrong when it comes to travel allowances? No. Behold a report from the Herald Sun back a couple of years ago. Now, we know today there was the figures that were there about Tony Abbott that he had to pay back the best part of $9,400. Well, according to the Herald Sun back in 2011, they reported that 65 MPs had to repay close to $100,000 in the 5 years before that, from the start of the Labor government through till 2011. $100,000, 65 MPs, all sides of politics. Tony Burke, 15 times he got it wrong and he had to pay back $7,000. A Liberal MP, Dennis Jensen, had to pay back $13,500. He says it was his advisor's fault. Well, too bad. You've been done in. By the way, you can also see some other names there. Julia Gillard, some family members apparently used cab charges that they shouldn't have. Catherine King, another Labor MP, and Malcolm Turnbull have all got it wrong. As for Peter Slipper, again, the Herald Sun back in 2011 told us that in the 10 years prior, he had to pay back $17,000. So is it a story? Absolutely. Should Tony Abbott have had to admit it earlier? Absolutely. But he's not Robinson Crusoe, and I would love to see the reporters hounding away at 65 MPs, not just Tony Abbott. Well, but we all know that's not going to happen. And that's part of the way politics works these days. As you know, politics is not just about the news, it's not just about policy, it's not just about personality, but it's also about narrative. The narrative that was successfully built by Tony Abbott against Julia Gillard was that it was a chaotic Labor Party run by somebody who was a proven liar and therefore you shouldn't vote for her. Well, that narrative ran very good and very hard, so much so that Kevin Rudd was able to return to the leadership. But now the narrative has changed, and the press gallery, who want to hound away at Tony Abbott about monies paid back from 2009, they should be hounding Kevin Rudd about the who knew what and why and how many warnings and why did he ignore those warnings about the insulation story. But because the narrative in Canberra is that the game is 50-50 and it's game on and Kevin Rudd's in the driver's seat, do you think they're going to start hounding him? I don't think so. Meantime, in the real world, some actual news that happened today that barely got a mention with either of our political leaders, and you haven't heard jot from the man who has now spent 22,000 kilometres in the air since becoming Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd. National Australia Bank survey shows that business confidence is the lowest it has been in 4 years. That's way back when Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister the first time around. Look forward to the reporters asking him about that, or maybe handing him about a scandal that saw 4 people die and 250 homes burn. Do you think they're going to follow up on that, or will they just sit back and wait for tomorrow's distraction from Kevin? Remember, a distraction a day keeps bad polls away.